Hey guys, and thanks for joining us, the Fantasy Philosophers, for episode 3 of our YouTube series. We're still breaking down the NFC and breakout candidates. My name's Dustin, and I've got my co-host Patrick here. Last episode, we did the NFC North. This week, we are going to talk about the NFC East, and we're going to identify potential breakout candidates. In case you didn't listen to the prior episode, our definition of a breakout is a player who's being drafted but has a significant potential to outperform his ADP. So we're going to talk about some of those guys, why we think they're breakout candidates. Some of the guys we agree on, some we don't. We'll get into all that as we talk about each player, but we're going to go ahead and jump right in here. NFC East, first team up is the Cowboys. I'm going to toss it over to Patrick here and let him get started. That's his team. It's America's team. If you didn't know, Patrick is a Cowboys fan. So I'm going to let him talk about his team first and see what we got.
Everyone, thanks again for all the support, all the love. Excited. This is episode 3, Fantasy Philosophers. Let's get it. So, Dallas Cowboys, breakout candidate, Michael Gallup. So, again, as Dustin mentioned, if you didn't watch the prior episode, go back, at least watch the beginning, because we really break down the criteria and the source where we pulled all this ADP. But I really want to dive into the players and get to the content that I know each and every one of you wants. So Michael Gallup, at the time that I pulled the ADP, he was going late 8th round. I've seen him go much later. So I'm just putting that out there. I've personally took him at the end of the 10th round about a week ago. So I'll take it when I can get it, but even in the 8th, let's talk about Michael Gallup. So a common resource that I will probably use in most episodes, but I'm going to keep giving them that free plug, playerprofiler.com. If you're not using it, I highly recommend it. I mean, it gives you such in-depth stats that you're just not finding elsewhere. Check it out. You can thank me later. So fantasy points per game for Michael Gallup. And keep in mind, he did only play 14 games. But fantasy points per game, number 17 at the wide receiver position. Yards per pass route, number 15 at the position. Yards per target, number 12. Yards per reception, number 10. And what's really crazy, everyone, is I will acknowledge he had 11 drops, which I believe was tied for first at the wide receiver position. So when you're able to put up, a couple of those metrics that I just mentioned, especially fantasy points per game, as well as yards per reception, when you have 11 drops, I mean, I'm not going to act like the 11 drops isn't somewhat concerning. It is. But he's still a young player. But the fact that he was able to achieve what he did with those 11 drops included, that really impressed me. With that draft of taking CeeDee Lamb, he's that new toy, the new kid on the block. He's still a rookie wide receiver, everyone. He is. There's no denying the talent, not for a second, or the upside. Could he ball out his rookie year? Yeah, he could. I mean, we saw several rookie wide receivers break out last season, which is always surprising to me. I usually expect a receiver in the NFL to take about a year to get up to speed, but
Same.
We'll see what happens. But I did want to acknowledge the fact that Lamb, I would say overall more talented, does have higher upside, but the fact that he's still a rookie, he's having to deal with this COVID offseason, we really need to temper expectations going into his first year. I don't see Michael Gallup just disappearing, with Randall Cobb gone, Jason Witten's gone. I know they signed Amari Cooper, but you know, when you're dealing with these NFL contracts or any sports contract for that matter, what you see on the surface, it's not always what it seems, because I believe they have an out after 2 years. So, I'm just keeping that in mind. The fact that they have that out after 2 seasons, maybe they're not 100% committed to Amari. That they could potentially be, but I mean, his stats are there at the end of the season, but game to game, he's so inconsistent. I don't think that he is just the lock alpha wide receiver one. I think Michael Gallup could give him some real competition, especially during Lamb's first season. So I'm not out on Michael Gallup. In fact, I'm loving the discount. McCarthy's now with the Cowboys. I mean, Dak has shown each and every season. I believe he outproduces his ADP each and every season up until this season, which it'll be extremely hard to do at this point. That offense, man, we're coming. Michael Gallup, take him at that discount, but make sure that you get this guy.
When I looked up his ADP, I was actually a little surprised because he finished as he 24 wide receiver last year. I don't have that on me, but almost positive he finished as a top wide receiver. He's going as wide receiver 35. That doesn't make any sense to me, and it has to be because they drafted Lamb. Lamb's got all the pre-draft hype. I think Lamb is going to be a great receiver in the league one day. I don't think it's going to be this year. We already have mentioned several times this COVID offseason is a different, totally different offseason than these rookies
unprecedented.
Get. I don't see Lamb making as big an impact. Yeah, I just don't see him making as big an impact this year as people seem to think. So Michael Gallup, ranked number 10 overall in the league in yards per route at 2.16. Saw 133 targets in just 14 games. Cobb and Witten are gone. McCarthy's here, which to me indicates that they're going to start throwing the ball more. He's always had a pass-heavy offense. And for me, Gallup is going to be the 1A, 1B situation with Cooper. Agreed. Because Cooper is so volatile in those games where he is getting you 2 fantasy points, I think Michael Gallup is going to be the guy to go off for the wide receiver 1 week. I also think he's going to have a weekly wide receiver 2 floor, but there's going to be like every other week where he gives you that wide receiver 1. So I think he's going to finish potentially as a high-end wide receiver 2. Depending on how big those wide receiver 1 games he gets, his overall finish might even be low in wide receiver 1 potentially. You talked about the out in Amari Cooper's contract, and I love it because I think the Cowboys are already thinking, we just drafted Lamb. Gallup is he's developing nicely, right? And maybe this year Lamb doesn't do much, but then the second year we expect Lamb to start stepping up and being our wide receiver 2 or being that 1A, 1B option that we have. And then we can trade Cooper if he's still with us, or if no one wants to trade for him and we don't have a need for him, we have an out, right? So I definitely think Lamb's a buy-in dynasty. Love the talent, love the draft capital, all that, yada, yada. Everyone said that a million times already.
Go get him. Redraft.
Redraft.
Not saying completely avoid him, but temper those expectations going into year 1.
100% agree. And for me, wide receiver 35 is a steal for Michael Gallup. Especially the way we've seen him play the last year and a half. And he finished as a top 24 wide receiver last year in only 14 games. So why he's slipping to wide receiver 35, I can only imagine it has everything to do with the CeeDee Lamb hype.
Rookie hype.
Which for me
gets people every time.
Every time, man, that rookie fever. So for me, Michael Gallup is a buy, especially at ADP.
Agreed. So that's the Dallas Cowboys for you. Who we got next, Dustin?
Alphabetically, we've got the Eagles. So I can start us off on the Eagles because this is one of my guys. I reluctantly traded him to you recently in one of our dynasty leagues. So enjoy. But my guy is Dallas Goedert. I still don't know how to say his name. I'm going to go with Goedert.
Depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
But thank you,
so,
by the way, for that trade. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you gotta pull the trigger. Even if you like a guy, thought the value was there. So,
yeah, especially when you're as tight end heavy as you are.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I love me some tight ends in Dynasty. It's typically tight end premium. I roster the heck out of those dudes. But yeah, Dallas Goedert is going as 115 overall, tight end 16, which again is perplexing to me because last year he finished as tight end 10. So he's going like a full tier later. It blows my mind. But yeah, and we saw him get way more involved in the offense last year, right? So after week 7, he only had 2 games where he didn't get a 75% snap share. And maybe some of that can be attributed to that's a lot of snaps for a tight end too, man. Maybe some of that can be attributed to their crappy receiver situation all throughout last year. But honestly, I didn't see it get any better or much better over the offseason. They might get Deshaun Jackson back. Maybe Greg Ward takes a step forward. Can Alshon Jeffrey stay healthy? Who knows? They did get Jalen Reagor, but again,
I do like Reagor.
Yeah, we're gonna beat this drum to death though.
Again,
COVID offseason, man.
Rookie hype, temper those expectations.
COVID offseason. I love Jalen Reagor's talent. I love his situation. I'm just not expecting much out of him his rookie year until maybe the end of the year. What I do expect is for the Eagles to realize, because Doug Peterson's a smart coach, and I might be teetering on the line of assumption of rational coaching here, but I do expect Doug Peterson to use more 2 tight end sets and to realize what he has in his number 2 tight end and just use him more. He's a mismatch nightmare. He's big, he's fast, he runs decent routes, he's athletic. He's an up-and-coming tight end. He's the tight end that you want, right? I would argue that 22 personnel with 1 running back, 2 tight ends is their most – that's how they put their most talented and also experienced players on the field. Ertz is 29 right now. I believe he turns 30 in the middle of the season. We talked about it a little bit when we talked about the Vikings on the last episode. Age 30 is historically when you start to see a spike in soft tissue injuries. Ertz doesn't have the perfect health record. I don't think many tight ends do. It's a brutal position. They get blasted by safeties and linebackers over the middle all the time. And they're big dudes themselves, so they can take it. But eventually, man, it gets to you. So for me, this one was easy. Going as tight end 16, finished as tight end 10 last year. I'm expecting probably, I think he's probably in line to finish at about tight end 7 this year because I expect increased usage, especially when you consider it took until week 7 for him to really start getting that snap share you want to see. If he continues that through most of the season, man, I think you're really getting a steal at tight end 16 because, like I said, last year he already showed you he can finish tight end 10 with Ertz there, with only having to wait until week 7 to start really being a part of the offense. So he spends all year as a major part of the offense, man, and you've got yourself you've gotten yourself a bargain tight end there is what you've got.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the fact that I now have him in Dynasty, I certainly hope so. But yeah, I agree with everything that you said. In fact, the only reason I didn't use Goedert as my breakout for the Eagles is I was about 95% sure you would have him. So I went in a bit of a different direction. But well said. Well said. I love it.
Yeah, it's another one of those guys I couldn't leave our startup draft without. I couldn't do it. So
I feel you.
Someone finally wrestled him away from me. Congrats, dude.
Persistence pays.
It does.
With that being said, my breakout candidate, JJ Arthega-Whiteside. And for those of you that did watch episode 1, I just briefly touched on him during the episode. But just to go a few steps further, the reason I have him as a breakout, I mean, the guy did practically nothing last year. He's virtually going undrafted. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there was an Eagles fan in your league. Maybe they're taking him towards the end of the draft. But, I mean, you can wait and grab this guy at the end of the draft. And, the fact that not only he personally admitting to battling multiple injuries throughout the season, but hearing the Eagles GM, Howie Rosen, coming forward and confirming the exact same thing that he personally admitted, that says a lot. It's already tough enough for a rookie to make that transition to the NFL. But when you're trying to make the transition and dealing with injuries, I mean, that's rough. I know there was at least a few reports that he had talked about having to have his teammates or just others, maybe family members, depending on where he was, like legit carry him to the bathroom. I mean, wow, that's
I didn't hear all that.
yeah. I don't remember the specific source, but if you look him up on rotoworld.com and go to the recent news, it'll be one of the first few that pop up for him. So shout out to Roto World, been using them for years. The draft capital was drafted in the second round. By no means are they going to be a one and done, just give up on the guy. Not a chance. And then looking at the team's wide receiver depth chart, and you touched on it when you just discussed Dallas Goedert. I mean, you have 2 aging wide receivers with concerning injury histories. Djax, I don't even think I have to go into Djax. I love the guy, that he has speed. He's aging and he keeps getting hurt. So I'm not planning for Djax to play a full season. I'm hopeful that he plays half the season.
He's amazing for the 1 to 3 games that he touches the field.
There you go. Father time caught up to him. It happens to everyone, unfortunately. He had a great career, but, that window is moving towards being completely closed sooner rather than later. Alshon Jeffrey, I used to love this guy. And it seems like he had one great season back when he was with the Bears. And ever since then, he's done okay in a couple of seasons, but just never lived up to the hype that was around him. But he's a 30-year-old receiver, and the guy's coming off of foot surgery in mid-December 2019. So practically half a year ago, for Liz Frank injury. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't have any credentials in the medical world at all. But if you look at any players that had to go through this type of injury and the recovery and their production when they came back, especially at the wide receiver position,
it's not great.
First of all, I'm going to be shocked if he is able to play to start the season. I can't imagine him being ready, but the team continues to comment that they expect him ready. So I guess there's the off chance. I don't count on it. Even if he does, I'm not excited about Alshon Jeffrey. So with that being said, when you can grab a guy that was drafted in the second round just a year ago in JJ Arthega-Whiteside, Carson Wentz, when he's on the field, amazing talent, gets it done in the pass game. I don't think we've seen anything near what JJ is capable of. And assuming he's healthy, which obviously we'll have to continue monitoring, he could potentially be a league winner. I truly believe that. I mean, the added competition is only a rookie wide receiver that I do like in Rager, but you know, with the COVID, again, I keep going back to it, the COVID offseason, along with just rookie wide receivers, usually taking at least a year, if not two, to adjust to the NFL. I don't expect Rager to just explode on the scene. That'd be awesome if he did, but I don't expect it. Again, assuming he's healthy, I think we see much more of what we should expect moving forward from JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Go get him.
Nice. I was big on JJAW, another guy I was really hyped about for the startup for the Dynasty League that we're in, and just, didn't do much year one, but as we've talked about several times already, typically takes receivers more than a year to actually produce and show us what they're all about. So
Absolutely.
I like it. Their receiving core is just a strange mix of stuff to me. It almost seems like they really don't. Almost seems like until Jalen Rager, they really didn't have a plan.
Yeah, I'm 95% sure that they actually exercised like a final year option on a contract for Alshon Jeffrey. And I'll double check when the recording is done, and I apologize if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So I do want to throw that out there, because if in fact that's confirmed, that's very shocking to be a 30-year-old who hasn't done anything close to what everyone's expected him to do other than that one great season when he was with the Bears, and coming back from that foot injury. That's just nasty. Like, I'm not touching him at all. I love Djax, especially back in the day in his prime. Again, unfortunately, Father Time, he came. Djax, I love you, man, but hopefully you mentor these young receivers, give them some tricks of the trade, and, you had your time. Go enjoy your life, man. That the time's coming, but JJ Arcega-Whiteside, go get him. League winner.
Deshaun Jackson, tricks of the trade, be really fast.
True that. Jalen Rager, be faster, man. Come on.
Yeah, be fast, man. Just be fast. Cool. Well, that was interesting for the Eagles. Next up, we got the Giants. You wanna get us started on the Giants?
Yeah. New York Giants. Darius Slayton, ladies and gentlemen. Darius Slayton. Remember this name. So what's very noteworthy, because I don't know if everyone's aware, but he is actually a state champion sprinter in high school. I don't recall him participating in track when he was at Auburn, but I know he was a beast in the return game. But, just taking a look at what he was able to accomplish last season during his rookie year, while playing with a rookie quarterback at that, 48 receptions, 740 yards, 15.4 yards per reception, and believe it or not, 8 touchdowns. I was surprised when I saw the 8 touchdowns, because I certainly remember seeing some highlights of some long touchdown plays to Slayton. I didn't realize it was 8. That was really impressive. But for me, when you can get at someone early 11th that's already shown some major upside in his rookie season, he should have good rapport going into his sophomore year with Daniel Jones. And then with an aging Golden Tate, who, I love him as well. And he actually looked explosive still last season. But, we have to remember he is at 31. And unfortunately, once you get into those 30s, it comes and goes pretty quick. So we really have to just keep – yeah. And then Sterling Shepard, unfortunately, the concussion history, major injury concern. I think Slayton is a lock for that wide receiver 3 on the depth chart, with upside to move up if should anything happen to Tate or Shepard. And just to hit on some metrics, again, using playerprofiler.com, that I thought were extremely impressive and definitely worth sharing. Um, he was in the 95th percentile in both the 40-yard dash and catch radius.
Catch radius, really?
Catch radius. I wasn't as surprised about being that high for the 40-yard dash,
Yeah,
but
me neither.
seeing him as 95th percentile catch radius, that combination just seems deadly. And again, we saw him produce as a rookie, which is tough to do. With the healthy Saquon, that's going to draw a lot of wide open play action routes to Slayton. I'm grabbing as many shares of Slayton as I possibly can. So Darius Slayton, go get him.
For sure. And I love that take. You mentioned just a minute ago that he'd be the wide receiver 3, and I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, wide receiver 3, like he's third on the pecking order, right?" But when you consider who the other 2 wide receivers are, Darius Slayton is 100% the first look on deep passes.
Danny Dimes looked for him too.
Yeah.
You go back
So
and look at the game log. He was looking for Slayton down the stretch last season. So they have that connection.
yeah. So for me, like, even if he's not getting as many targets as you would like maybe, obviously Golden Tate's a target hog. So he's not going to get as many as Golden Tate, but what he's getting are really high value targets. So even though he's not getting as many, each one is going to be worth a lot more points than, Tate catching a 2-yard under route. So I
Agreed.
like it. And I had a feeling that you were going to take Darius Slayton, which is why
You know me too well, sir.
I didn't. I went a different direction, and I'm gonna go ahead and preface this by saying this is the highest ranked player that I will talk about. And again, a breakout player is someone who we believe has a chance to outperform ADP. So that being said, I want to talk about Evan Engram. He's going at an overall ADP of 70. He's the 5th tight end off the board typically, which is pretty high. However, I think
That upside though.
that upside, man, that upside though. So here's why. Here's why I think he could outperform his ADP. So Jason Garrett is going to be there running that offense, and he has a pretty solid history of feeding tight ends. Jason Witten, the lowest amount of targets Jason Witten has ever received was 83, and that was last year when he was, he's an old man. He's a dad runner. I'm pretty sure he hasn't just lost a step. He's lost several, and he's still got 83 targets last year. Ingram's way more athletic, way more playmaking potential. Like after the catch, I expect to see way more spectacular catches over the course of his career than Jason Witten. So if Garrett feeds Engram like he's shown his penchant to do with Witten, I think the sky is the limit. In Ingram's rookie year, he got 115 targets, and
I remember that season.
he finished just tight end 5 overall as a rookie. Typically takes rookies several years to figure it out. Now, in Ingram's case, since that year, he's had a little bit of trouble with the health. Hoping that he stays healthy this year. But in my opinion, with Jason Garrett calling the plays, I think he's a lock for 100 targets. And I think he sees more like 120. And I think with those 120 targets, he's got potential to be in that top tier of tight ends with Kittle, Ertz, Kelsey, and who knows? Those guys are all getting a little older. Well, not Kittle, but I think Engram could be in the conversation for the tight end 1 or maybe tight end 2. I'm not sure that Kittle's a monster, so I'm not sure that anyone beats Kittle out.
If
Engram
plays every game, coin flip for me.
Yeah, they're both super talented. I think Engram might be a little smaller, but with that, a little more athletic as far as speed, that type of stuff. I I see Engram getting 100 plus targets, and if he's healthy for all 16 games, 100 plus targets and being in that conversation. And that's why I think he has a chance to be a breakout, right? We saw him break out as a rookie. He's been marred by injuries a little bit since then, but I think he could re-break out this year because you already hit on it. Like they kind of have some unproven weapons behind him, I guess, or out there in the receiving core with Golden Tate, not unproven, but old. Um, and then you've got Sterling Shepard, who I was really high on coming into the league. Um, Everything I've seen since makes me think he's a solid wide receiver too. As far as like for a team, not necessarily fantasy, but like a solid wide receiver too for a team. And then Slayton's definitely the up and comer, but I don't know that he's got the build and the skill set to be a number one guy just yet, or ever maybe. I haven't watched a ton of film on Darius Slayton, I'll be honest, but from what I have seen from him, he's not going to be that prototypical X receiver. So for me, Evan Engram, even at his fairly high ADP right now, is someone who, if he's sitting there and it's my pick in the 5th round, I'm looking at it, man.
Great points. Great points.
Yeah,
Quick question for you. I want to get your input here
sure.
because it's something that I've been just really thinking about when it comes to Evan Engram. And I'll go ahead and say that in most situations I would not consider doing this. But what are your thoughts of handcuffing Engram with Caden Smith, who went somewhat unnoticed, but for those who were paying
He
attention,
produced.
the guy produced when Engram was out. And considering the injury history, you could do worse as for a replacement. If you're an Engram owner, should Engram go down if you have Caden Smith hanging out there at the end of your bench? So that was just a thought that I've really been thinking through. What's your take on that situation? Is that something that you would even consider in a redraft league or no?
Well, I think it all depends on roster size and bench size,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
For me, I am just personally, I'm not about handcuffs. I think it's a waste of a roster space. But if handcuffs are your thing, I think that I know a lot of people are, like to handcuff because they like that insurance. So if that's what your strategy is and has in it, then I don't think it's a bad idea because I agree with you. He went way under the radar, but when I kind of started looking at, his targets, his receptions, his yardage totals and everything, I was very, very surprised.
Same.
Um, and, if they see injuries to the wide receiver core again, maybe this is another team that starts running a lot of 2 tight end sets. So maybe it doesn't even take an injury to Engram to make him relevant. Especially like as a coach, I'm not sure how you can see someone produce in the NFL like that and not think to yourself, we've got to get this dude more involved, right? Because he's obviously a weapon. Now, imagine if he's on the field with Engram, Slayton, and Tate. Um, Ingram's going to get most of the attention of the safeties, the linebackers. So Caden Smith definitely isn't getting like the best coverage linebacker out there. That's for sure. So while I'm not a believer in handcuffs, I wouldn't be opposed to it because I do see a scenario where he finds value outside of an Engram injury.
Yeah, right on. And I guess one of the main reasons that ever came up as a topic that I've been thinking through, with an aging Golden Tate, who again, I'll acknowledge, he looked great last year. He really did. I know he
Yeah.
missed those first 3 or 4 games for whatever off-field,
I mean,
yada.
Golden Tate's
But
a late round target for me right now.
yeah, so I'm not counting him out, but as a receiver that's over 30 years of age, there's certainly that chance that Father Time hits, unfortunately. Shepard, his injury concerns. When I look at Engram, I think of him more as a big wide receiver versus an actual tight end. And I'm almost wondering if converting him to wide receiver would preserve his health.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because when I was looking into Evan Engram and how Jason Garrett utilizes tight ends, Jason Garrett actually likes to put them in the slot and work them out of there, as opposed to being an inline blocking tight end, which Evan Engram has done for the most part in his short career so far. So maybe not being an inline blocking tight end takes some of that physical toll away from him, and working out of the slot more keeps him healthier.
Good point. Yeah, I certainly hope it works out that way. I mean, such a talented guy. You hate seeing talent get injured, regardless of who it is or what team they play for or what skill level they're at. We don't wish or want to project injury on anyone. But unfortunately, when it comes to playing fantasy sports, it's something that you do have to take into consideration. And all you can really go off of is past injury history. So, just something that I was going back and forth on. So I appreciate you sharing the thoughts. It kind of what you said. I think for me, if it was a deep bench,
Then I'm all about it.
that's a money pick, your second or very last pick, to have, someone that you're going to feel good about replacing your share of Engram should Engram go down. But yeah, it was just something I was curious what your take on was. So I appreciate you sharing. You made some really good points.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm actually really excited to move on to the last team in the NFC East.
Me too.
I had a feeling we were going to talk about the same player, but I wasn't picking anybody else. And so, moving on to the Redskins, I can kick us off here. Talking about Mr. Derrius Guice. Adrian Peterson is 35 right now. 35.
Impressive,
I don't know
though.
how he's still playing, man. I'm 30 and my bones creak. He's 35 out there playing NFL football, man. Props to AP. But again, Father Time comes for everyone eventually. And I got to believe, like, I know what Frank Gore played till he was 36.
Oh, he's still playing, bro.
Okay. My bad.
Playing,
it'll be
but he is
2040 and we're going to
Gase.
say, Frank Gore's still playing football.
Adam Gase, he'd be the person to, anytime they get in the red zone, yank Le'Veon out just to piss him off. I could totally see Gase pulling a stunt like that.
But are you really playing football if you play for Adam Gase?
That's what I've been trying to figure out for years, and I just gave up. I avoid the situation completely. But I did just want to mention Frank Gore's name because
You're
right. Guy,
I wrote him off.
He deserved a shout out. He's by no means fantasy relevant at this point in his career, but he
is still playing.
What a career! He is.
So yeah, AP, he's ancient, dude. Derrius Guice, when he's been healthy in the league, has looked really good.
Oh yeah.
Per Pro Football Focus, and this is a minimum of 40 attempts, Guice ranked number 5 in avoided tackles with 28.6. He avoided tackles on 28.6% of his touches. That is super impressive, especially when you combine it with his yards after contact per attempt is at 5.7. So on 30% of his touches, he makes you miss. And even if you touch him, he's still getting 5 yards. I want that all day, especially at an ADP of 97 overall and running back 32 off the board. You talked about not counting on injuries, but I can't believe that any coach is going to look at Derrius Guice and the current state of Adrian Peterson's career and say, that Adrian Peterson should get the lion's share of carries. I don't see it. I will say one thing that concerns me a little bit is how crowded that backfield is. They've got Antonio Gibson. A lot of people think Bryce Love is going to make a push for some reps. Honestly, I think that backfield's going to be murky probably until week 2, week 3, week 4, maybe. But I think whoever ends up as the guy getting the most carries is going to be a little bit of a lottery ticket, especially because none of those guys are going early in drafts. They're all going pretty late. So you're probably going to get a starting running back, and I think it's going to be Derrius Guice. He's got the talent. He looked amazing at LSU. He's had some knee issues, but luckily last year it was an MCL sprain, right? He's had a lot of time to recover, and it's actually really typical to be coming off of an ACL injury, and then because you're actually not really ready to be playing football again, you overcompensate and you have another soft tissue injury, which I think is exactly what happened to him last year. So,
unless your name's Adrian Peterson, of course.
Well, that dude's, I'm fairly certain he's an alien or a lizard person or something like that.
He was at least grown in a petri dish. So,
something different. He's an anomaly. Let's say that.
I agree.
But yeah, I think Derrius Guice has a better chance of staying healthy this year than he did last year. And I think he has the best chance out of all those dudes I listed to take over the starting role and be a workhorse back for him.
I agree 100%. 100%.
I knew you would.
Man, when you want to talk about a league winner, Derrius Guice, I'm getting as many shares of him as I can. I really am. Hold me to it, Dustin. Let them know if I'm not. I promise I'm coming after him. So Derrius Guice, at the time that I pulled all the data, he was going mid to late 8th round. So let's start at the top. What's very noteworthy, and I wanted to really make sure to hit on this when we talked about Derrius Guice, that Washington Redskins medical staff. My goodness, what a terrible reputation they've had, with handling injuries. Whether you want to talk about Guice specifically or situations with Trent Williams, Jordan Reed, just to name a couple.
I know you saw Alex Smith's leg.
Yeah, I did see Alex Smith's leg, but I'm assuming that most of our viewers are well aware of those situations that have come up. The fact that ever since Ron Rivera was hired, I mean, they've really been working to rebuild that medical staff this offseason, which makes me feel very optimistic about Guice's situation in particular. But since hiring Ron Rivera, they have taken on both a new head athletic trainer as well as a new medical consultant. And, if you want to pull up this info, you'll see very quickly that each of the new additions to the medical staff, I apologize that I don't have their names in front of me, but very good reputations in their fields, great credentials. Things are looking bright in that area. Beyond that, again, my go-to playerprofiler.com, looking at a couple of efficiency rankings, these blew my mind. So production premium, and in a nutshell, this measures a player's productivity across league average situations. Derrius Guice was number 2. And wait for this next one. I love this next one. Yards created per touch. So this is going to be all yards above and beyond what were blocked per touch. Yards created and generated by the runner after the first evaded tackle. Derrius Guice, number 2. If the man is healthy and on the field, he's an RB1. period. In my opinion, I mean, if you want to fade him, I'll gladly take him.
Me too.
But, with such a poor history of a medical staff there and the fact that it's been addressed ever since Ron Rivera took over, that makes me feel great. This seems like the first time Guice will be completely healthy going into a professional season. So that also makes me feel very optimistic. And those efficiency stats, man, I mean, those just jump out. If the man's on the field, sky's the limit.
Yeah,
Sky's the limit. Yeah,
that
he has some injuries, but I mean, you know, let's think about this. Upside along with injury history. The person I think he's most comparable to, honestly, Dalvin Cook. And he's going in the middle of the first round. I believe last year he went second, maybe third, and you're getting Guice 8th, 9th round. Wow. What's not to
yeah,
like there?
that yards created stat is fantastic, because what that tells me is that even if his offensive line is so, he has the ability to create on his own and still get those yards, still produce. And you mentioned Dalvin Cook. I don't have his numbers right in front of me because that's not who we're talking about. But I know Dalvin Cook is up there as far as like elusiveness, breaking tackles, avoiding tackles, things like that. So and then the parallels between the injury, I think that's right, that's spot on. So yeah, I got Dalvin Cook, I think, last year around the second round. I was all about Dalvin Cook last year. Um, and it's so much easier to be about Derrius Guice this year than it was Dalvin Cook last year, because it's so much easier to get him, right? Round 8, round 9, it's much
And
easier to pull the trigger on that.
yeah, and if it doesn't work out, your team is not just destroyed because you blew an early round pick on them. It's
Right.
not.
But if he is an RB1 for the season,
League
lottery
winner.
ticket.
Yep.
Lottery ticket.
League winning pick, ladies and gentlemen.
Straight to the
Derrius
ship.
Guice. I'm gonna regret that everyone I play with is gonna watch and see this, and I'm not gonna get him in any of my upcoming drafts, but that's okay. We're here to share, learn from others, network with other content creators. So it's all love. I'll miss out on them. My league mates who pick them ahead of me, y'all can thank me later. Shout out to all y'all. But yeah, Derrius Guice, that's probably my number one target of any player that we've talked about thus far in the NFC.
I think because of his ADP, that's tough to say that he's my number one. But he's up there for me so far with the people we've talked about with Goedert and Gallup. So far out of the people we've talked to, those are definitely my top 3.
I agree. And it's funny you mentioned those two names in particular, because I was kind of like looking through my list and just for fun, more or less, like was trying to figure out who would I want the most. What it really came down to was the position, because tight end is much deeper than most years. I
Sure.
mean, for those who are just starting to prepare for those upcoming drafts, do a couple mocks, maybe a best ball. I know they have best balls on several sites that you can actually pay a $1 contest fee. And yes, it's best ball, but that to me is a better way to go about getting a feel for where people are going than doing these free mock drafts where people are doing just random and outrageous stuff or leaving
100%
after
agree.
their third pick. So hop on. If you need any suggestions, shoot us a comment. We have several, but we can certainly let you know which one we prefer, but everyone's different. What I like may not be the same, but we can give you a few most definitely. So let us know if that's something that you're in need of a recommendation for. But yeah, the tight end position much deeper than normal. Wide receiver as
Wide
well.
receiver,
My
so deep this
goodness,
year.
have there ever been this many wide receivers?
I don't know. I
Jeez.
find it interesting because it's, you get in the middle rounds and you typically in those rounds, you're like, who am I going to take? Who's really going to do something? But you're sitting there looking at all these receivers and you're just like, I want that guy and that guy and that guy. I don't even have roster spots for all these guys, but I want all of them.
No kidding. No kidding.
Interesting year for sure. And
Yep.
I
So,
also think it's interesting that we both agreed out of the top three that we've had so far, they all come from the NFC East, all in the same division. I find that kind of interesting as well. I think it's kind of speaks to how that division has undergone some changes recently, and they're definitely gearing up, becoming younger. And I think in 2 to 3 years, that's going to be like the division of death in football. We'll see how Dwayne Haskins progresses, but right now that division's looking like it could be pretty scary in the next year or two.
I agree. I agree. The offensive threat that Dallas presents, and their defense isn't bad. I may be a little biased because I do root for them, but I don't think their offense is bad at all. I think they have an elite offense coming at you that, off the top of my head, the only offense that I would put ahead of theirs currently is the Chiefs, just because I'm a huge Dak Prescott fan, but I'm the first to say it. Patrick Mahomes is just doing stuff I've never seen be done at the quarterback position. Major upgrade, Kelsey over Jarwin, obviously, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman. Even Sammy Watkins, even though he was more or less a bust based on what everyone thought he'd do. It seems like when the game is on the line, he comes in clutch. It's like he really saves himself somehow, some way every season. I can't help but notice that.
He just won't go away.
He just won't. He will not. He refuses. So, yeah, Redskins, they got a major upgrade at defense with their most recent first round draft pick. If Haskins can take the next step, and Guice is on the field, Terry McLaurin, what's there to even say? We've already seen it once.
And don't sleep on Steven Sims Jr. He's going to be their wide receiver too this year.
Good point.
Not going drafted right now in fantasy.
Yep. And then Eagles, amazing offensive line. I've seen a lot of people that do offensive line rankings. They usually have Eagles 1 or Colts 1 and vice versa for the second spot, but they're certainly up there. Some elite tight ends to target, a forgotten high draft capital pick in JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Jalen Reagor, who knows how good he is playing where he did in college. That's the one thing that's tough to judge about him is unfortunately he wasn't in the greatest college offensive system.
Sure.
But yeah, I hope you're right. NFC East on the come up. I'm excited. Is it kickoff yet?
I got to stop looking at the days because, it's like, oh, it's 100 days away. And that seems like forever ago, but it really wasn't. So when I checked the other day and we were still like, 92 days away, I was a little disheartened. So I'm going to try to quit the countdown for a little bit and just focus on getting through this crazy COVID summer and continuing to research fantasy football in the meantime and put some more content out. This was part 2 of our NFC breakout candidate breakdown. So next episode we'll move on to the NFC South, which is another interesting division with some interesting players that I can't wait to talk about. So I think that's going to wrap us up for the NFC East. You got anything else for us, Patrick?
Just want to thank everyone for viewing, subscribing, liking. I can't emphasize it enough. We're here to open up the lines of communication and just really join and actively participate in this community. Let us know your thoughts, really, whatever it may be, positive, negative, neutral. We'd love to hear your feedback. I'm sure there may very well be a breakout candidate that we completely overlooked. We're human. So if you realize like, hey, how in the world did they miss this guy? Let us know. And we'll give you a shout out next episode.
For sure.
We're here to share, but learn from each other. So don't hesitate. Fantasy Philosophers, Season 1, Episode 2, still getting our feet wet. Again, as newbies here and as content creators, just bear with us. We're working on things. We know that we got a lot of improvement to make, but I can assure you we're certainly working on it. So we're excited for you to notice improvement as we continue forward. But until then, stay tuned. Next episode, we'll continue with our NFC South breakout candidates. Much love, everybody.
Yep. Till next time.